The dog knew something. But what? It was supposed to be a moment of silence. A sacred pause. A breath held by the entire room, packed with some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Directors, actors, politicians, everybody who had worked with or been moved by Rob Reiner's legacy. And yet, in that very silence, something happened no one could have prepared for. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The dog howled. Not a whimper, not a cry of grief, but a raw, eerie, soul-chilling howl that rose up from deep inside the chapel, sending shivers through the bones of even the most jaded celebrities seated in the front row. And then, he turned. The dog didn't look up. He didn't look around. He turned directly toward the one seat in the front pew that was empty. Nick Reiner's seat. The son who wasn't there. The son who had been arrested for the brutal murder of his parents just days earlier. Now let's stop right there. Because this isn't just some viral moment caught on a live stream. This isn't a feel-good pet story with a sad twist. This is something deeper, stranger, more sinister. That dog's behavior wasn't a coincidence. And what he did next, what he carried with him onto the casket, set off a domino effect that has upended everything the public thought they knew about Rob Reiner's death. Let me ask you something. Do you believe dogs know when something is wrong? That they can sense guilt, fear, even death? Because if you do, you're not alone. And if you don't, you might want to reconsider by the time this story is over. Rob Reiner was 78, a man who shaped the fabric of modern American film and television. From All in the Family to Stand By Me, from A Few Good Men to The American President, he wasn't just a director. He was an institution. But institutions fall. And sometimes, they don't crumble from the outside. Sometimes the blow comes from within. He and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were found stabbed to death inside their $13.5 million Brentwood estate. Their bodies were discovered in separate rooms. The crime scene wasn't just gruesome, it was confusing. No sign of forced entry. No smashed windows. No security alarms triggered. The LAPD said it looked almost peaceful. But peaceful is the last word anyone would use to describe the chaos that would follow. You see, that estate had a guest house. And in that guest house lived someone else. Someone who shared their last name, but not their values. Nick Reiner, their 32-year-old son. A man with a long history of addiction, rehab stints, rehab escapes, and angry voicemail messages no one talks about publicly. Until now. He was arrested that same night, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. But here's where it gets darker. Reports now claim that it was Rob's daughter, Romy, just 27 years old, who found the bodies. And according to a police source, her first words weren't, "Call an ambulance." They weren't, "Are they breathing?" They were allegedly, "He finally did it." She told police that a dangerous family member had been staying on the property and should be the first suspect. There were no signs of a break-in, but there were signs of betrayal. And at the center of all this, a dog, a golden retriever named Moses. He'd been with the family for years. A rescue, according to friends. Sweet-natured. Old. Loyal. Not trained for attack. Not trained for alert. Just present. Quiet. Until that day at the funeral. Until the moment he did something no one could explain. As pallbearers prepared to lower Rob's casket into the ground, Moses broke free from his leash. Not running. Not wild. But with purpose. He leapt onto the casket. Not barking. Not pawing. But laying his head down, flat, across the lid. As if trying to listen for something. A heartbeat, maybe. Or a final whisper from the man who had loved him. That's when the howl came. And that's when the room, every camera, every phone, every eye, turned to look at the empty chair in the front row. Nick's chair. Reserved. Polished. Untouched. What did the dog know? Was this grief? A canine response to tragedy? Or was it something more? Because in the hours after the funeral, a funeral that shook Hollywood to its core, LAPD reopened a critical piece of evidence, a sock, found inside the casket. You heard that right. The dog had carried something with him. A sock. Not just any sock. A costume prop. Bloodstained. Later matched to trace DNA from both Rob and Michelle. And one other person. Someone whose fingerprints should not have been on it. That discovery reignited the investigation, and it wasn't the only twist. Let's talk about the autopsy for a second. Released by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner just days after the funeral, It detailed the cause of death as multiple sharp force injuries. Not gunshots, not blunt trauma, sharp force, a knife, or multiple knives. Used with such precision, the report stated that it appeared cinematic. Now I'm not saying that means what it sounds like, but I am saying the Reiners were Hollywood royalty, surrounded by actors, screenwriters, special effects artists, directors, people who know how to stage things, people who know how to hide things, people who know what looks convincing on camera. So when the autopsy called the death homicide, but couldn't fully agree on how the killer entered or why there was no defensive evidence from Rob, one of the most outspoken and active men of his generation, people started whispering. Was he drugged? Was he lured into a false sense of safety? Or did he recognize the attacker? Because here's the thing. You can prepare for an intruder, but you don't prepare to fight your own child. The news of the Reiner's death dominated headlines. But it was the reaction that sparked something deeper. Actors issued cryptic statements. Close friends refused to speak. Romy vanished from the spotlight entirely. And Nick? Well, Nick didn't cry. He didn't beg for mercy. According to a guard at the holding facility, he laughed when he was read the charges. He laughed. This isn't a normal Hollywood tragedy. This is a true crime story soaked in legacy, soaked in money, soaked in years of quiet family drama. A story of betrayal, of a son once lost to addiction, now at the center of a murder investigation, and a daughter trying to hold what's left of the family together with one hand, while the other clenches a diary that may very well be the key to unlocking everything. And yet, for all the courtroom drama, for all the breaking news, for all the analysis of forensics and motives, the most haunting detail remains a dog, a howl, a stare at an empty chair, and a sock left on a coffin. So let me ask again, do dogs sense guilt? Do animals carry memories of what they've seen? Do they try to warn us, even when we don't understand? Or was this all just coincidence? Was Moses just mourning the only father figure he knew? Or was he calling someone out? Because what came next? After the funeral, after the videos went viral, after Romy's strange late-night hospital visit, and after Nick's courtroom confession, what came next would shake not just Hollywood, but the entire idea of what we thought the Reiner family was. And it all started with a howl. What does a $13.5 million estate in Brentwood say about a man? Power? Prestige? Privacy? Or does it say something else, something more subtle? Like the need to keep secrets behind walls that never talk? The Reiner residence wasn't just a house. It was a compound, nestled along Tiger Tail Road, just a whisper away from the gated properties of A-listers and studio titans. It was the kind of address that didn't need a nameplate. People knew. But if those walls could speak, would they have cried out for help the night Rob and Michelle died? Or worse, would they have stayed silent, loyal to the very person they should have exposed? Let's walk through the scene, shall we? Not as tourists, as detectives, as questioners, as people trying to make sense of a senseless night. The front gates never creak. You'd expect creaky hinges, right? A sound to match the horror inside. Something dramatic. But no, the front gates didn't creak. They slid open smoothly, silently, when LAPD arrived. No signs of tampering. The keypad showed the last entry was coded in. That's right, coded. As in, someone with access. Someone with permission. The Reiners didn't take chances. Especially after what Romy once referred to as that Malibu scare, which insiders say involved an intruder who turned out to be an obsessed fan. After that, they had the security system overhauled. Cameras, sensors, panic buttons, reinforced doors. So how did someone get inside and do what they did? Unless they never needed to break in at all. The main house, a masterpiece of control. Every inch of the interior was curated. You could smell the money, but also something else, precision. Minimalist modern meets quiet warmth. A lived-in feel. Books arranged by author, not color. Family photos framed in wood, not gold. Michelle's touch, definitely. The kitchen was the heart of the home. White marble, dark cabinets, a 12-burner Wolf stove built for hosting. But there were no signs of dinner that night. No wine glasses on the counter. No dishes in the sink. The dishwasher was empty. It's as if no one had eaten. Or maybe someone had, and cleaned up like a ghost. Detectives noted something strange. The fridge had been restocked. That morning. Receipt time-stamped. But by midnight, untouched. That leaves us wondering. Was the killer already there before the groceries even arrived? The bedrooms, a tale of two ends. Rob's body was found in the master bedroom. Michelle's was discovered 2 rooms over, in what she called the retreat. A reading space, no bed, just a velvet chaise, a stack of books, and a fireplace that hadn't been used in months. She was seated, or at least, she had been. Autopsy notes say her posture indicated she was caught off guard. Her book, Margaret Atwood's The Testaments, was open on her lap, pages stained with blood. The page number? 198, a page about betrayal. Coincidence? Or someone's sick idea of symbolism? Rob's room told a different story. Disarray. Not ransacked. Not messy. Violent. Sheets thrown. Pillows shredded. Nightstand knocked over. A single framed photo, him, Michelle, Romy, and Nick, was found face down on the floor. Glass shattered. Only Nick's face had a shard through it. Deliberate? You tell me. The guest house, a home within a home. Now here's where things turn. Because the Reiner compound didn't stop at the main house. Behind a manicured hedge and across a stone path sat the guest house. Smaller, but not small. A full 1,200 square foot living space. Separate entrance. Separate security system. And it belonged to one person. Nick Reiner. Estranged, then reintroduced. He'd been allowed to move in temporarily, according to a close family friend. But months had passed. No clear move-out date. No lease. Just access. To the property. To the people. To the pain. Inside the guest house, police found signs of isolation. Piles of scripts. Half-filled notebooks. A whiteboard with plot points. One said, "Patricide equals final act of love." That's a quote you don't just brush off. Was it fiction? Or confession? There was also an unopened envelope, addressed to Rob. Written in Nick's handwriting. Found in the trash. Its contents burned. Only the bottom of the letter survived. One word visible. Sorry. The hidden room. And here's where the story begins to slip into something stranger. Under the guest house, beneath a hatch that had been carpeted over, was a cellar. Unfinished. Damp. A secret not listed on any blueprints. Inside, a projector. A foldable chair. A single bulb. And on the far wall, photos. Projected. Rotating. Old family slides digitized into a haunting loop. Nick as a boy. Nick in rehab. Nick hugging his mom. Rob standing behind them, distant. Cold. This wasn't nostalgia. It was obsession. A visual diary of rage and yearning. Why was this room hidden? Who was supposed to see it? And what was its purpose? The dogs knew first. And then, there was Moses. The golden retriever. Neighbors told police the dog had been howling 2 nights in a row before the murders. Not barking. Howling. Strange, right? Especially for a dog known for being calm, even lazy. But something had agitated him. Something he couldn't explain with words. Just sound. And the cameras? They had no footage of the guest house door those nights. That feed was wiped. Only that one. All other cameras were operational. You're starting to see the pattern. This wasn't a break-in. This was a slow build. A gathering storm. And the house, despite all its smart tech and layered protections, couldn't stop it. Because the danger wasn't coming from outside the gates. It was already home. The unlocked piano. Here's one more piece no one is talking about. In the den was an old, upright piano. Family heirloom. Michelle played. Rob didn't. Romy learned on it. Nick hated it. Said the sound reminded him of church and lies. But police found it unlocked. Strange. Why does that matter? Because inside the piano, wedged between the hammer and strings, was a flash drive. Hidden. Missed during initial sweeps. On it, journal entries. Michelle's. Audio files. One dated 3 weeks before the murder said, "Nick hasn't been right. Something's coming. I can feel it. I told Rob we need to ask him to leave." And Rob? There was a second file. His voice low. Defeated. "I love my son, but I think he hates me." What parent says that out loud? What father records it? Unless he knew time was running out. So let's ask the real question. Was the Reiner estate a sanctuary? Or a trap? Did the high walls keep danger out? Or just lock it inside? Because for all its elegance, all its smart home systems and layered security, the house on Tigertail Road couldn't stop what was coming. And that means this story isn't about fences or gates. It's about the people already inside. And one of them, maybe more, had been planning something for a long, long time. But what did the killer leave behind? And what was missing from the master bathroom? Not something stolen. Something deliberately removed. We'll go there next. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if everything had gone according to plan? What if Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer had lived through that Sunday like any other? Late brunch, a walk in the garden, a call to Romy, a light dinner, maybe a quiet movie. What if the sun had set and nothing had happened? But something did happen. And now we're left piecing together the final hours of a man who helped shape modern American culture, and the woman who loved him from behind the lens for nearly 4 decades. It was a beautiful day in Brentwood. Not a cloud in the sky. No signs of what was coming. No alarms. No last-minute warning texts. Just silence. And then the silence was broken. So what really happened inside that mansion on Sunday, December 14th? Let's walk through it, minute by minute. Because in the gaps lie the answers. 9 a.m., groceries arrive. Instacart receipt timestamped at 8:52 a.m. Delivered at 9:03 a.m. Simple order. Eggs. Organic spinach. Ezekiel bread. A single bottle of white wine. A vegan frozen pizza. Dog treats. The driver leaves it at the front gate. Surveillance footage shows Rob walking out in sandals and a robe to retrieve the bags. He waves at the camera. Smiles. That was the last recorded footage of Rob Reiner alive. Let that sink in. 9:45 a.m. A call that didn't happen. Rob usually called Romy around this time every Sunday. Sometimes earlier. Sometimes later. But always called. That morning, Romy waited. Her phone stayed silent. That was her first red flag. No call. No voicemail. No dad joke, text about her dating life. She sent a quick message. You alive, old man? No response. She told police it wasn't that unusual, but something just felt off. The kind of off you can't explain until it's too late. 10:30 a.m. Michelle sends an email. Not to family. Not to friends. To herself. Subject, keep for Monday. No body text. Just a single attachment. Encrypted. When detectives tried to open it, it was password protected. 5 attempts later, they stopped. Digital forensics flagged it for further analysis. What was in that file? We'll come back to that. 12:07 p.m. Doorbell rings. Footage shows a figure approaching the front door. No face. Just a figure. Tall. Male. Hoodie. Appears unarmed. He doesn't press the doorbell. He knocks. The camera's audio picks up one sound. 2 firm knocks, then silence. No one answers. Why? Were Rob and Michelle already gone? Not yet. Because at 12:14 p.m., Michelle's laptop logs a search. Best Bluetooth speakers for seniors. She was alive. At her desk. Browsing. And yet, just minutes later, the entire house goes still. 1:22 p.m., the 9/11 hang-up. This part is chilling. A 911 call is placed from Michelle's phone. It lasts 4 seconds. No words. Just static, and what sounds like a gasp. Then, click. Police dispatch flags it as a possible accidental call. No units are sent. You might be wondering, why wasn't there a follow-up? Welcome to the system. Glitches happen. And in this case, it might have cost 2 lives. 2:11 p.m., Romy calls again. Still no answer. This time she leaves a voicemail. Just checking in, don't ghost me. Also, can you make sure Moses has food? I forgot to send the auto ship. Still sounds casual. Still sounds like a daughter trusting her parents are just busy. They weren't. By now, police estimate Michelle was already dead. She had been stabbed in the chest. Once. Straight through the sternum. A deep, precise wound. The coroner would later say it was clinical. There were no defensive marks. No signs of struggle. She never saw it coming. 2:34 p.m., Rob's bedroom door opens. Smart home logs show movement. The sensor on Rob's door is triggered. He's either entering or someone else's. Police now believe this is the moment Rob found Michelle's body, and the moment the attacker turned on him. Rob had injuries on his arms. Cuts. Bruises. He fought back. A man his age, 78, against a younger assailant? The odds were never in his favor. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. One item in the room was shattered, his reading glasses. They weren't near his body. They were found halfway down the hall, as if thrown, or dropped during a chase. And one lens? Smeared with blood. But not Rob's. 3:06 p.m., Nick's phone pings nearby. He'd told police he was at the beach, clearing his head. But cell phone triangulation disagrees. His phone pinged near the property, within 500 feet. He wasn't at the beach. He was close. Too close. When confronted, he said, "I lent my phone to someone that day. Must have been that." To who? He didn't say. He just smiled. 3:45 p.m. A text that vanished. Romy sent another message. "You guys ignoring me or dead? LOL." Later, she would stare at those words on her phone in the police station and whisper, "I didn't know." But something stranger happened. When detectives reviewed Michelle's iCloud backup, that text was missing. Deleted. By who? Apple confirmed it wasn't deleted from Romy's side. It was deleted on Michelle's device, or by someone with access to her account. Someone who wanted it gone. Someone who didn't want time of death to be easily determined. And if that doesn't make your skin crawl, it should. 5:18 p.m., sunset in Brentwood. The sun dipped below the trees. The lights in the main house never came on. No one took Moses out to pee. The backyard security camera shows him pacing, circling, looking toward the guest house. The lights there? On. 6:01 p.m., the call that changed everything. Romy calls again. Still no answer. This time, she drives over. 27 years old. Black Tesla. Pulls into the driveway at 6:33 p.m. And what she found inside changed her forever. But we'll get to that. First, you need to understand something else. The timeline. The deliberate silences. The gaps. Who had the time to kill two people in separate parts of a house, clean up, and erase digital trails? Who had motive? Who had access? Who knew the dog's feeding schedule? Because remember, Moses was pacing. Not barking. Not hiding. Pacing. He knew who was in the house. And whoever it was, he didn't fear them. The final photo. Here's the last piece. Rob's phone. It was locked with Face ID. Yet somehow someone used it. The final photo stored in the gallery is strange. A blurry image. Indoors. Faint overhead light. A corner of the guest house's living room. And in the bottom right corner, a shoe. Black. Scuffed. Partially cut off by the frame. A single white shoelace. Romy later confirmed, those were Nick's shoes. No doubt. But Nick says he wasn't there. He says that photo? Photoshop. Detectives disagree. And when the image was enhanced, they found something even more chilling. A faint reflection in the glass of a cabinet door. A face. And it wasn't Rob's. So now ask yourself, why was there a delay in the 911 response? Why did someone delete Romy's texts? Why did Rob's glasses end up down the hall? And who deleted surveillance footage from only one camera, the guest house feed? Because whoever did this didn't just kill two people. They choreographed a timeline. They staged a silence. They built a narrative. But narratives unravel. And Romy's discovery would rip the mask off completely. Because what she found in that house was far worse than just bodies. She found the one object no one ever expected to surface again. And when police realized what it was, everything changed. When Romy Reiner pulled up to the Brentwood estate that evening, she expected, at worst, another cold shoulder from her father, maybe some tension, maybe a snippy joke from Nick if he was lurking around. She did not expect silence. She did not expect the front door to be slightly open. And she definitely did not expect to see Moses, her parents' golden retriever, curled up in a ball, shaking, blocking the hallway like a sentinel. But it wasn't the sight of the dog that froze her. It wasn't even the blood she spotted on the floor as she stepped inside. It was the smell. That sharp, metallic smell that instantly told her something terrible had happened. And in the next 74 seconds, everything changed. 6:34 p.m., the call that didn't start with a greeting. When Romy called 911, she didn't start with hello. She didn't ask for help. She said, "He finally did it." Let's pause. That is not a normal thing to say when you've just discovered your parents murdered. She didn't say they're dead. She didn't say someone's in the house. She didn't even ask for paramedics. She said, "He finally did it." For words. Heavy. Devastating. Damning. The dispatcher asked, "Ma'am, who are you talking about?" Romy's reply? Silence. Then, "You already know." The 911 call, transcript highlights. The full audio hasn't been released, but leaked transcripts have surfaced. Here are the moments that matter. Dispatcher, "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Is anyone else in the house?" Romy, "No, not anymore." Dispatcher, "What do you mean?" Romy, "They're cold. There's blood. So much blood." Dispatcher, Ma'am, I'm dispatching officers now. I need you to step outside. Romy, he was staying here. In the guest house. Dispatcher. Who was? Romy, Nick. My brother. This wasn't panic. This wasn't hysteria. This was a sister making a statement. A daughter reporting what she believed was the inevitable, as if she'd been bracing for this for years. Inside the hallway, police body cams captured Romy standing barefoot in the entryway, holding her phone in one hand and her mother's scarf in the other, covered in blood. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was composed. Cold, some would later say. Unnervingly calm. But trauma does strange things to the brain, and Romy had seen signs long before that day. She just didn't know where the signs would lead. Her first words to officers on scene. When LAPD arrived at 6:42 p.m., the first officer on the scene asked her, "Are you alone?" Her answer? "Not anymore." The officer clarified, "Is anyone else inside the house?" Romy said, "No, just ghosts." Let that land for a moment, because what she said next shattered the image of the perfect Hollywood family. They let him back in. I begged them not to. I told them something like this would happen. The guest house door was locked. When officers asked about Nick's location, Romy pointed to the guest house. "I don't know if he's in there," she said, "but that's where he was living." They knocked. No answer. They tried the door. Locked. Romy handed them the spare key. Inside, Nick was gone. What they found instead? 3 used candles. A half-drunk bottle of absinthe. A typewritten note taped to the wall. Some houses are built to bury people. Creepy? Yes. But it gets worse. The sock on the casket? Romy had seen it before. While officers were combing the house, Romy sat on the back patio, silent, staring at the pool. She turned to one detective and said, "There's something you should find in the piano. It's not mine." They asked why the piano mattered. Her reply? "Because Nick always said it was hollow like our family." Detectives found the flash drive. But that's not the revelation here. It's what Romy told them next. "That sock, the one Moses had at the funeral? I know what it is." She claimed it was part of an old Halloween costume. Nick had once dressed as a slasher film director for a party. The sock was fake blood spattered. But Romy said she saw it again weeks before the murder, soaked in real blood, when she walked past the guest house and caught Nick doing laundry at 2 a.m. She didn't tell anyone at the time. She thought, hoped, it was a bad dream. The basement revelation. Here's where it gets darker. Romy told investigators about the room. "What room?" She said, "There's a hatch in the guest house. You won't find it unless you know to look." The hatch led to the secret cellar we discussed earlier. But Romy knew it existed. She'd been down there once. Months ago, Nick had taken her down there to show her his memory reel. Slides of family moments. She said it made her uncomfortable. Felt like a museum of resentment. She never went back. But she remembered what Nick said that night. "One day, this room will make more sense than anything upstairs." The shocking accusation. In her first official statement to LAPD, Romy dropped the hammer. "I believe my brother planned this. Not just days before. Years. And I believe my parents knew, but were too ashamed to say anything." She explained how Nick had always been volatile. How his apologies were performances, his rehab stints pauses, and his outbursts. Predictable. She said Michelle kept journals. She knew where some were hidden. She led officers to a bookshelf in the master bedroom, behind which was a false back panel. Inside, 6 leather-bound notebooks. Michelle's handwriting. Her fears. Her doubts. Her slow realization that the son she loved might not love her back. And in the final entry, Rob says he forgives Nick. But I'm not sure Nick forgives us. What the detectives noticed about Romy. One officer later described Romy's demeanor as hyper-aware. She wasn't numb. She was watching, calculating, making sure certain things were found, and others, perhaps, weren't. Some online sleuths believe Romy knows more than she let on, that she may have stumbled across the truth before the murders and chose silence. But others believe she was trapped, torn between loyalty and survival. Ask yourself, if you knew your brother was dangerous, but your parents wouldn't listen, what would you have done? Would you have told police sooner? Would you have confronted him? Would you have walked away? Or would you have done exactly what Romy did? Waited, watched, and when the inevitable came, spoken just enough? The one sentence that changed the case. 3 days after the murders, Romy returned to the house, accompanied by 2 detectives and her lawyer. They walked through the property. She stopped outside the guest house door, placed her hand on it, and said, "This is where he wrote his ending." Cryptic? Absolutely. But investigators believe she meant it literally. They recovered a laptop hidden beneath a false drawer in the guest house desk. On it, a screenplay, untitled, 117 pages, about a Hollywood director, his distant wife, their perfect daughter, and the troubled son who frees them from the lie of family. The character names? Ralph, Michelle, Rose, Nicholas. Detectives renamed it The Confession. But there's one thing Romy didn't explain. When officers asked her about the sock again, the one the dog dropped on the casket, she hesitated, paused, then said, "There's something I can't tell you yet." When pressed, her lawyer intervened. Was it legal advice, emotional protection, or a warning? Because something about Romy's face, in that moment, changed. A flicker of something cold. A memory? A secret? A burden? We don't know. But we do know this. She's holding something back. And when that truth surfaces, it won't just clarify the case. It may rewrite it entirely. Because what Romy didn't say might matter more than everything she did. And someone was already working to silence her before she said too much. What makes a son kill his parents? Is it rage? Resentment? Revenge? Or is it something far more complicated? Something that builds not in a moment, but over years, slowly, silently, until it finally snaps? Nick Reiner wasn't a stranger to the headlines. But until now, he was always a footnote. A whisper behind the great name. The troubled son of a famous man. The kid who couldn't handle the spotlight. The cautionary tale buried beneath his father's Hollywood triumphs. But on December 14th, Nick stepped into the center of the narrative. Not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as the prime suspect in a double homicide that shocked the world. And the most chilling part? Many who knew the Reiners say they saw it coming. They just didn't want to believe it. The golden child that never was. Nick was born into power. By the time he was 5, his father had already directed The Princess Bride and Stand By Me. His childhood was peppered with red carpets, set visits, and A-list playdates. But while the world saw glitz, those inside the Reiner circle saw something else. Nick wasn't like the other kids. He hated cameras. Hated the way adults cooed over his last name. Hated being compared to his father. He once told a tutor at age 10, "I'm just a shadow to them." Michelle worried. Rob dismissed it. "Boys rebel," he'd say. "He'll find his footing." But footing wasn't what Nick needed. He needed grounding, and no one gave it to him. The spiral begins early. By 14, Nick was experimenting with pills. By 16, he was in rehab. Rob pulled strings, got him the best treatment money could buy. But Nick walked out halfway through, telling staff, "I don't need help. I need a clean slate." At 17, he was arrested for possession. Charges dropped. At 19, another stint in rehab, this time in Arizona. Lasted 6 months. Cleaned up. Came home. Relapsed. By 22, he disappeared completely from public view. Friends said he was living out of hotels, sometimes crashing with old connections from rehab. Others claimed he went abroad. Romy later confirmed. He was gone, but never gone. He always knew how to find us. That line chills me. He always knew how to find them, even when they didn't want to be found. The return nobody wanted. 3 years before the murders, Nick reappeared, unannounced, at his parents' Brentwood home. He looked thinner, quieter, but calmer. He said he was better, said he was writing again, said he wanted a fresh start. Rob, ever the optimist, welcomed him back, but only into the guest house, not the main home. A symbolic boundary. A mistake, many believe, that proved fatal. The guest house diaries. Police recovered several notebooks from Nick's guest house. Most were filled with unfinished screenplays. Dark, unsettling, repeated themes. Betrayal, legacy, ungrateful fathers, forgotten sons. One disturbing passage read, "I was born into a script I didn't write. I'm just rewriting the ending." Another, "Some people are murdered quietly. Others demand a scene." Investigators also found voice recordings. Nick, speaking late at night, ranting, debating himself, practicing monologues that blurred reality and fiction. In one recording, he whispers, "I don't hate them, but I hate who they pretend to be." And in another, "They always said I was dramatic. Let's see how dramatic I can be." The envy was palpable. Nick despised Romy. That much is clear. While he was spiraling, She was rising, getting booked, directing, making a name for herself, not as Rob Reiner's daughter, but as Romy, on her own terms. Nick wrote about it often, in a torn page discovered under his bed. They never gave me what they gave her. Same blood, different rules. Romy, for her part, stayed distant. She'd blocked his number months before the murders, told friends she feared his energy, that he carried rot with him. And yet, she never stopped checking on her parents, even when she knew they were letting a wolf live in the backyard, the wolf nobody knew about. Here's where things turn. 3 weeks before the murder, Rob met with his attorney. Confidential meeting. Updated his will. Sources now confirm. Nick was removed. Fully. Romy was listed as sole heir. The estate. The rights. The properties. Even the royalties. And the reason? A single line in the documentation. For reasons known to the family. That's legal speak for, we don't want this challenged. But it might have been the match that lit the fuse. Because a few days later, Rob confronted Nick. According to Romy, Dad told him he needed to leave. He gave him 30 days. Nick didn't respond. He just stared. Cold. Long. Like he was calculating something. The day before the murder. A neighbor remembers hearing music coming from the guest house. Loud. Strange. Like a score from a horror film. At 1 a.m., the music stopped. At 1:15 a.m., someone turned off the exterior motion lights around the back of the main house. Manual override. Not timed. Someone was preparing the scene. The arrest and the smile. Nick was arrested the night of the murders at a friend's apartment. He didn't resist. Didn't run. Didn't ask why. He simply said, "Took you long enough." Chilling. But not as chilling as what he said in the squad car. According to the officer transporting him, he looked out the window and whispered, "Now they'll finally hear me." His behavior in holding. No tears. No fear. Just silence. Then laughter. He laughed during his initial interview. When shown a photo of the sock Moses dropped on Rob's coffin, Nick asked, "Did the dog testify too?" Cruel. Mocking. Detached. Like he didn't view any of this as real. Or maybe it was real. Just not in the way we understand. Maybe to Nick, this wasn't murder. It was narrative closure. But here's the twist. Despite everything, the notes, the rage, the motive, the forensic evidence is still inconclusive. No direct DNA on the murder weapon. No fingerprints in the master bedroom. No blood trail between the guest house and the main house. Just circumstantial evidence. Emotional weight. Psychological motive. Which means one thing. If Nick did do it, he planned it meticulously. But what if he didn't? What if the story is even darker? What if someone wanted it to look like Nick? Someone who knew how to frame a narrative. Someone who stood to gain. Because while Nick is the obvious villain, the next chapter introduces a new theory. One no one saw coming. Why do people keep diaries? To remember? To confess? To protect themselves from forgetting who they really are? Or maybe to leave behind a version of the truth that no one dared speak aloud while they were alive. Because the Reiners, Rob and Michelle, left more than memories behind when they died. They left diaries. And those pages? They were never meant to be found. Let alone read by strangers. Let alone picked apart by detectives. Let alone become the center of a homicide case. But that's exactly what happened. And what those pages revealed. About their marriage, about Nick, about Romy, and about the final weeks before their death, ripped open a second storyline. What if the real motive wasn't just personal? What if it was inherited? The false wall. You remember Romy's tip. The bookshelf in the master bedroom. Behind it, a hidden compartment. Inside it, 6 leather-bound journals. 2 red, 4 black. All handwritten. No dates on the covers. Just one word inked in permanent marker across the front of each. Unsaid. These weren't to-do lists or quick therapy scribbles. These were narratives. Deep, emotional, sometimes disturbing chronicles of a life that, on the surface, looked perfect, but in private, was falling apart. Michelle's voice soft, sad, afraid. Let's start with her. Because in her handwriting, you could see it, restraint. She tried to stay neutral, tried to keep her tone composed, but the cracks bled through. In a 2021 entry, she writes, "Nick came by again today. He's thinner, cold. He didn't eat, but he stared at me like I owed him something. I tried to ask if he was okay. He just laughed." Another, "I keep telling Rob, this isn't about forgiveness. It's about fear. There's something hollow behind his eyes now. He used to be angry. Now he's calm. And that scares me more. And then, in the final weeks before her death, the tone shifts. It darkens. One page stands out. He knows we changed the will. He won't say it. But I feel it. It's in the air. Like static. He's watching us differently. Then this line. I woke up at 3 a.m. I swear I heard footsteps. Not outside. Inside. I checked the hall. Nothing. But Moses wouldn't stop growling. That was 11 days before the murders. Rob's voice. Guilt woven into pride. Rob's entries were different. Less frequent. Less structured. Sometimes scribbled on hotel notepads or typed then printed and glued in. But the emotional weight? Heavier. He struggled with Nick. That much is clear. One heartbreaking entry reads, I raised a boy with my hands, but I built a man with my silence. I ignored what I didn't want to see because it didn't fit the movie I told myself we were living in. He often blamed himself. What if my legacy isn't what I made, but what I failed to stop? In one note dated just 2 days before his death, Rob writes, he said something today, something strange. You'll be remembered better than you were. I laughed, but now I can't stop thinking about it. Was that a warning? Let that sink in. Rob Reiner, the man who gave us a few good men, who championed justice on screen, may have died ignoring the justice needed in his own home. The most damning page, one black journal, Michelle's, dated with a post-it, was marked, if anything happens. That's all. Just, if anything happens. Inside, she wrote what could only be described as a living will in narrative form. Not legal, not notarized, but powerful. She named Nick. Said she feared him. Said Rob disagreed. Said Romy had begged them to send him away. Again. I want this written down because I think I might be too cowardly to say it out loud. I don't trust my son anymore. Let's stop here. Imagine being a parent and writing that sentence. Now imagine dying 2 weeks later. Coincidence? Or the final signal no one acted on? Romy's role in the pages. Both parents referenced Romy repeatedly. They saw her as the light. The hope. The one we didn't mess up. But even Romy wasn't spared. Rob wrote, she's slipping away. I can feel it. She won't answer my texts. I think she blames us. And she might be right. Michelle echoed the same. She says we're letting poison live on the property. I told her it's complicated. She said, no, you're just scared. And maybe I am. There's a particular passage where Michelle recounts a dinner argument between Nick and Romy. Plates weren't thrown. No one raised their voice. But at the end, Nick looked at her and said, you're not blood. You're a rewrite. What did that mean? Some have speculated Romy was adopted or from a previous relationship, something the public never knew. But Romy herself has never confirmed or denied it. Was it a metaphor? Or something deeper? And if so, did it fuel Nick's rage? A missing journal. Here's where things get even stranger. According to Michelle's indexing, there were supposed to be 7 journals. Only 6 were found. The 7th, she wrote, was too dangerous to keep with the others. She named it Ashes. In a red journal, she writes, if you're reading this and something's happened to me, find the one I called Ashes. It has everything. The passwords, the letters, the photos. The LAPD still hasn't found it. Or if they have, they're not saying. The letters they never sent. Tucked into the back of one journal were 2 envelopes. Never mailed. One to Nick. One to Romy. Michelle's handwriting again. To Nick, she wrote, I hope one day you forgive us. For letting you come back. For hoping you changed. For not protecting you from yourself. To Romy, if I'm gone, it's because I waited too long to speak. Don't wait. Say everything. And don't be afraid to walk away. Romy reportedly read that letter at the precinct, then asked to be alone. She stayed in that room for nearly an hour. When she came out, she said nothing. She just handed the letter back and said, don't put that in the report. The pages were copied. Before the journals were placed into evidence, a detective made copies. Printed. Unmarked. But one copy went missing. Gone. Vanished. Internal review confirmed it was not stolen by press or family. It was taken internally, and leaked pages have since surfaced on dark forums, Reddit threads, even Twitter accounts that vanished hours later. Someone wants those pages public. Someone else wants them buried. And in the middle, the truth. A messy, emotional, horrifying truth. But here's the twist you weren't expecting. A line buried in Rob's journal. Almost missed. scribbled on the inside cover of an entry titled "Legacy is a Lie." He wrote, "What scares me most isn't what Nick might do. It's what I let someone else do. And if that comes out, everything we built burns." Who was he referring to? Was there another player? Another name? Or was he confessing to something darker? Because if Rob Reiner, the man known for telling other people's stories, was hiding one of his own, then the final chapter of his life may not be about murder. It may be about cover-up. And the only one left who knows the whole story might not be Nick, might not be Romy. It might be someone we haven't heard from yet. But they're coming. And when they do, those missing pages won't be missing anymore. They'll be weaponized. What if the one witness who saw everything couldn't speak? What if the only soul in the house that night who knew exactly what happened, every footstep, every scream, every drop of blood, wasn't a person at all, just a dog? Moses, a golden retriever. Old, loyal, quiet, until he wasn't. Until the day of the funeral, when he howled so loud it shattered the silence and pointed toward the one empty seat that everyone had been trying not to look at. Nick's chair. Coincidence? Maybe. But what happened in the weeks leading up to that moment, and in the hours afterward, tells a different story. Because Moses wasn't just grieving. He was remembering, reacting, and if we're listening, really listening, he might have been trying to tell us the truth all along. A dog's life at the Reiner estate. Moses was with the Reiners for nearly 10 years. Adopted from a rescue shelter in Topanga Canyon. Michelle had fallen in love with his eyes, mournful, human-like, like he understood pain. She wrote in one of her journals. Rob reportedly didn't want a dog at first. "I've got enough living creatures in this house to feed." But once Moses arrived, things changed. He became Rob's morning partner. Their 7 a.m. walks were routine. Coffee in hand. No leash. No need. Moses didn't stray. He slept beside Michelle's side of the bed, trained to alert if she had a nightmare, which, according to her journal, happened more often after Nick returned. "He senses things," she once wrote. "Sometimes I think he sees ghosts. Or worse. People who aren't pretending." The dog's behavior before the murder. The housekeeper, Lupe, reported something odd 2 days before the murders. She arrived early, 6:15 a.m. The house was quiet. She walked into the kitchen to start breakfast prep and saw Moses staring at the guest house window. Not barking, not whining, just staring, frozen, unmoving. She tried to call him. He didn't respond. Finally, she walked over and nudged him gently. He jumped, growled, not at her, but in reaction. As if startled. That had never happened before. Lupe later told police. "It was like he was watching something I couldn't see." The night it happened. There's no video of Moses during the murder. That camera feed, facing the guest house, was deleted. But investigators retrieved partial thermal motion data from a security-integrated Nest sensor. What it showed? Movement. At 2:11 a.m. A warm body, animal-sized, running up the side path toward the main house. Moses. Then, for minutes later, returning to the backyard, panting, slower, followed, seconds later, by a human heat signature. No face, no identity. But two things are clear. Moses knew something was wrong, and he followed. The sock incident. You already know this moment. The funeral, the howl, the empty seat. But what few realize is that the sock Moses dropped onto Rob's coffin was not just random. It wasn't a toy. It wasn't from the laundry. It was a specific sock. Police later confirmed it matched a pair in Nick's guest house closet. One of the few items not taken into evidence initially, because they looked clean. But Moses had kept it. Where? Under the deck. Hidden. Chewed, but not destroyed. Why? Was it a token? A scent? A trigger? Or was it something else? Something he knew mattered? Because dogs don't retrieve items randomly. They follow patterns, scents, emotions, and something in that sock made Moses carry it. Past the crowd, past the security, up to the casket, and leave it, right there, on Rob's chest. The bite that wasn't noticed. A veterinary report later revealed Moses had a minor injury, a chipped canine, and swelling on the left side of his jaw, likely from biting something hard. But when? And what? There were no bite marks on Nick, none on Rob or Michelle, but there was an indentation on the edge of Rob's closet door. Small, semicircular. Detectives believe Moses may have tried to bite his way into the room after the murder, or, more disturbingly, during. Was he trying to stop it? Alert someone? Or did he bite someone else, someone not accounted for? Because the chipped tooth timeline matches the date of death. And if Moses bit someone that night, the person might still carry that scar. But no one has stepped forward. Why? After the murders, Moses refused to enter the house. Once police cleared the scene, Moses was temporarily placed with a family friend until Romy took custody. But in the 2 visits he made back to the estate, something strange happened. He refused to enter the main house. Flat out refused. Sat down at the door, whined, then turned and walked back to the car. Even when Romy tried to coax him in with treats. Even when she called him from inside. He wouldn't budge. But the guest house? Different story. He sniffed the steps, pawed at the door, then growled. Low, deep, persistent. Like he remembered who lived there. Like he was waiting for them to return. A hidden clue in the dog bed. Romy later found something odd tucked inside Moses' old bed, which had been moved to her apartment. A small, chewed strip of black fabric. Velvet. Not from the dog toys. Not from furniture. Lab results confirmed it was a piece of a theater prop, specifically, the same kind of material used in a cloak worn during a Halloween party 2 years prior. The same party where Nick had dressed up as a horror director and worn that sock. You starting to see the pattern? Moses had kept pieces. Clues. Scented memory. As if he knew they would matter. Animal behaviorist brought in. The LAPD, under pressure from mounting public interest, consulted with an animal behaviorist. Dr. Elaine Cho. She examined Moses. His habits. His reactions to sound. Smell. Memory. Her assessment? This dog has exhibited signs of associative trauma. He reacts to specific sounds, metal clinking, deep male voices, certain colognes, with fear and aggression. This is learned behavior, triggered by something deeply upsetting. She added. His howl wasn't random. It was a stress response, a protest, maybe even an accusation. Chilling words. And when asked if she believed Moses could identify the killer if reintroduced to the scent, her response, absolutely. But the LAPD never confirmed if they tested this. And if they did, they're not talking. Romy's private video. 1 week after the funeral, Romy posted an Instagram story that was deleted an hour later. A 15-second clip. Moses sitting by the window, suddenly growling. Then barking, aggressively, at something off-screen. Romy's voice in the background. He never does this. What are you seeing, Mo? She pans toward the door. Nothing visible. But there was a reflection in the glass. A man, balding, wearing dark clothes. Just standing. Still. Watching. The clip went viral before Romy deleted it. She never addressed it publicly. And when asked by a fan in a comment thread if it was Nick, she replied only. It wasn't supposed to be anyone. So, what did Moses know? Did he see the killer? Did he follow them? Did he try to stop them? Was the sock an act of grief or a final testimony? We may never get a verbal answer. But dogs don't forget. They remember scent, fear, pain, and maybe, just maybe, justice. And if Moses ever stands in front of the man who did this again, he won't need words. Because sometimes, the loudest testimony comes from the ones who never speak. And while everyone has been watching Romy and blaming Nick, no one's been looking at the one person who trained Moses. The one person who wasn't family. The one person who disappeared right after the funeral. Until now. What do you get when a Hollywood icon dies under mysterious circumstances? A red carpet in black. Rob Reiner's funeral wasn't just a memorial. It wasn't even just a farewell. It was a scene. A production. A performance stitched together by publicists, legal teams, legacy curators, and people with secrets to bury. Held in the center of Los Angeles at a historic chapel known for hosting industry legends, it was supposed to be a moment of closure. But instead, it cracked the story wide open. And the crack didn't come from a speech, or a leaked eulogy, or even a press leak. It came from a sound, a howl, and everything that followed proved one thing. Even in death, Rob Reiner couldn't escape drama. Because someone hijacked his funeral, not with a bombshell, but with silence. A very intentional silence. And someone else? Never showed up. Let's walk through it. The guest list that read like an Oscar ceremony. The Reiners were Hollywood royalty. So naturally, the crowd reflected it. Martin Scorsese, seated 3 rows back, wore dark glasses and didn't speak to reporters. Steven Spielberg, reportedly pale and tense, ducked out after the first hymn. Meryl Streep brought flowers and left with tears in her eyes. Morgan Freeman stayed in his car for 15 minutes before entering, whispering to his assistant, "Something's off." And those were just the confirmed names. Dozens of studio execs, directors, writers, politicians, all eyes on the casket, and all whispers on one person, Nick, or more specifically, his absence. The empty chair. There was a seat. Front row. Center left. A folded name card. Nick Reiner. Never occupied. Never removed. And no one was willing to say why it was there if they knew he wouldn't come. Some speculated it was a gesture of hope. Others said it was a trap. Either way, that chair became the most talked about object at the funeral. Until Moses howled. Security was tighter than usual. Not because of celebrity paranoia, but because, as one LAPD officer confirmed, we were given credible reason to believe someone might disrupt the ceremony. That someone, Nick Reiner. The LAPD presence was discreet but strong. Snipers were spotted on nearby rooftops. Undercover plainclothes officers mingled with the crowd. Every bag was checked. Every phone turned to silent. Still, tension crackled. You could feel it in the air. And that tension only escalated when the doors opened and Romy walked in. Romy's entrance. She arrived alone. No security. No entourage. Just her, in a long black coat and sunglasses, holding a single red rose. But what really struck people? She wasn't crying. She was scanning. Taking in the crowd, as if searching for someone. Later, footage would show she paused as she passed Nick's chair. Paused and whispered something. The audio's fuzzy, but lip readers believe she said, "You don't even deserve this seat." The eulogy that almost didn't happen. Rob's best friend, longtime collaborator, was scheduled to speak. But 2 hours before the service, he pulled out. Why? No reason given. Instead, Romy stepped in. Unexpected. And what she delivered wasn't a eulogy. It was a message. Romy's words. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a warning. Here are some lines from Romy's chilling speech. My father believed in stories. But he forgot that not everyone lives by the same script. We welcomed someone back into our lives, into our home, hoping they had changed. And sometimes, hope is just denial with makeup on. This was not senseless. It was a slow spiral we all watched, but pretended wasn't real. My mother once told me, people show you who they are. Your job is to believe them the first time. I wish I had. The audience didn't breathe. She didn't name Nick. She didn't have to, because her last words sealed it. Some people come into this world asking to be loved. Others come in demanding it. And when they don't get it, they make the world pay. My parents paid. I won't. The chapel went silent. And then, the dog stood up. Moses howled. During the moment of silence, Moses, seated in the aisle beside Romy, stood up, walked forward, jumped. Not frantically, not playfully, deliberately. He climbed onto Rob's coffin, laid down his head, and howled. Low, long, bone deep. The sound filled the room. Some gasped, some cried, but others turned their heads toward the empty chair, Nick's chair. Moses then turned his head and stared, unblinking, fixated, until an usher gently removed him. But not before Moses did one more thing. He opened his mouth and dropped a sock, bloodstained, onto the casket. You could hear the collective exhale, and someone near the front muttered, "What the hell?" The sock was taken into evidence. Detectives in attendance, yes, they were there, moved quickly. The sock was bagged, later confirmed to match a costume Nick once wore. Traces of human blood. DNA partial match to Rob. But what mattered wasn't the sock. It was what it represented. It was a message from the only witness who couldn't speak. And now he had. The hidden attendee. Now here's where it gets strange. Footage from outside the chapel shows a figure, hooded, gloved, standing near the rear exit during the service. Never entered. Never spoke. Just watched. When Moses howled, the figure turned and walked away. Some say it was a journalist. Others believe it was Nick. But a few insiders whisper something else. It was someone from inside the family. Someone no one knew existed. A half-sibling? A ghost from Rob's past? We don't know. Yet. The man who disappeared. There was one more funeral guest no one noticed was missing until days later. His name? Clay Reiner. Rob's cousin. Former assistant. Briefly stayed in the guest house years ago. He'd been in touch with Nick. Frequently. Texts recovered show a message from Clay to Nick, just 3 days before the murders. You're almost free. Just finish it. Finish what? Clay hasn't been seen since the funeral. Phone. Off. Apartment. Abandoned. Car. Found in San Pedro. Keys still in the ignition. Gone. As if swallowed. By grief? Or by guilt? One final detail. The program that was pulled. Every seat at the funeral had a printed program. Standard stuff. Photos. Quotes. Order of service. But sharp-eyed attendees noticed something strange. The first batch had a quote on the back. Some people are born to rewrite the ending. But that version was quickly pulled, replaced with one that said, "Love lives on in stories." Who made the change? Why? And who chose that original quote? Because it sounds awfully familiar. Almost like something from Nick's journal. Or his screenplay. The one titled The Betrayer. So what was the agenda? Closure? Legacy? Public image management? Or was it something darker? A test? A trap? A way to flush someone out? Because while the world saw a funeral, some saw a message. And someone heard it loud and clear. They just didn't expect what came next. An anonymous email. Subject line, "You missed a clue." Attached, a photo of the sock. Before the funeral, in the guest house. Timestamped 3 days before Rob's death. Let's return to the chapel. To that heavy, velvet air thick with grief, suspicion, and too many unspoken truths. People weren't there just to mourn. They were watching, listening. Every glance, every cough, every whisper. Calculated. But in that cold,